Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and of course, my they, them royalty, this is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. You guys know what the deal is. It's way too early in the morning because I've been up all night. I watched every single snap from week 14 of the NFL season, and I'm going to break it down in an hour or less so that you don't have to watch all those games, so that you understand that with 4 games left in the season, there's some teams that are in it, there's some teams that are out of it, and there's a whole bunch of teams that are like some weird location in between. But before we do that, I do have to get the tweets off, bro. Got to get the social media stuff going off because honestly, I'm assuming that's the only way that we're actually getting consistent viewers, which is surprising. We got like almost 1,000 views over the last couple of weeks of the NFL season so far, and it looks like we may have 2,000 views by the time we do all 18 weeks of the season. So after that's all said and done, obviously I'm going to do the playoffs too and everything. But after we do that, I guess I'll have to start talking about basketball and all the other sports. So that should be pretty fun. Anyway, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook. And hit me up on Instagram at TheAshtonForever. Most importantly, make sure if you're watching right now to like and subscribe for the YouTube channel. We're almost at 40 subscribers overall, and we get almost 20 views per episode. Don't know how many people are sticking around for the entirety of the episode, but I'm just going to assume that I'm getting 100% retention rate, even though I could easily check that in my settings. I'm not going to. So you do you, I'm going to do me. And sorry I'm talking right now, trying to vamp a little bit so that I can gain access to, there it is, my current live stream that's going on. It is muted. Wow. I guess YouTube learned from my settings. Anyway, we got the link to the pod right now. We got the link going off right now for the episode, and I just got to copy and paste it into this tweet. Select, copy, post on that one. Going to post it again from the actual Twitter account for the podcast, which is Broke Boy Sports Pod. If anybody cares, the only thing that comes out of that account is the link to the show, which means that it's probably getting like dampened on, probably overwhelmed with all the Nazi propaganda on Twitter. Anyway, sorry, almost clicked onto my own show. Trying to sending it from my personal account, which you don't need to know. I think it's in the show notes or whatever. But yeah, if you want to watch me tweet about the fucking challenge or whatever, or maybe some more personal thoughts, check that out. Anyway, Andrew Schultz is in the Street Fighter movie. That's tough for them. Somebody somewhere doesn't really pay attention to the internet too much. Or maybe they pay attention too much and they know things. Anyway, we have... I don't even think I sorted stuff. God damn it. I started this episode and I have the categories that we sort everything into, and I didn't put it in the graphics, so it's not even correct on the graphics. Anyway, we're just going to talk about it, ramble about it here, and hopefully I'll be able to... I don't know, man. Maybe you have to listen to the show to understand what game we're talking about, but as you can also tell, I'm still working on the fucking glare in my glasses when I'm doing this show. But anyway, we're taking it from the top. We have the 5 categories that we break games down into and discuss them from that point of view. I'm supposed to do those in an hour or less. That is my goal. You're welcome to, I think we did do it last week. So we're going to try and get it going here. We're going to start trying to do the show faster. We're at the 5-minute start mark of the show, and I got my stuff ready, bro. So let's cook here. Let's get it popping. We have the 4 categories. It's Snooze Fest. Those are the most boring games of the entire week. We have the Heartbreakers. Those are the games that I feel like either psychologically broke the fans, which obviously doesn't take all that much, because how much of a fan can you be if you're not on a constant roller coaster like I was when the Texans were playing the Chiefs this past weekend? Anyway, Those are the heartbreaker games. You have the oh my games that have like weird results that have some kind of significance to either the season overall or maybe to like the future leanings of what a team is capable of. And then you have the this is what we're here for category. The games that I believe at the bottom of my heart are the ones that kind of create NFL fans like myself, because at some point I was not an NFL fan and then I became one as time went on. So there are games out there that you watch that inspire you as a person who likes sport, or maybe gets you into something new that you never thought you were into. That's how it's worked for me. I've been a big sports fan my entire life. So played and been a big sports fan my entire life. So taking it from the top, the snooze fest category. These are the ones we're going to breeze through. You guys know the deal. These are the games that have the least interest, and for the most part, I watch them and I regret every second of it after the fact. So snooze fest right at the top, the biggest blowout of the entire. Well, was it? Second largest No, it was. It was the biggest one. 34 points. Right? Is that what that is? No, it's the second largest. Somebody lost 31-0. We'll talk about that later. The Rams lost. The Rams won 45-17. They are officially the number one team in the NFC overall in the conference. They are also leading the NFC West, which is probably going to be the most heavily contested game, because that's going to decide the fate for pretty much every other team in the NFC. I personally, and I'm saying it here off the top, I think that the NFC is going to have the NFC West is going to have three teams make it into the playoffs. It's going to be the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers in some way, shape, or form. Honestly, if you had to get me to predict somebody who was going to win the NFC West, I would say the 49ers as of right now, just because they've already split with the Rams. I do believe the Seahawks are probably going to get back at them on this second go-around, which would be, the Seahawks have technically gotten better, while the 49ers have gotten worse because of the whole Brock Purdy situation. Plus, they don't have Nick Bosa. That interception in week one that resulted in them losing in week one overall, and it's basically been like they haven't lost since then. The only team they've lost to so far is the Rams. If off the top of my head, I'm a Texans and Seahawks fan, so I'm quite accustomed to watching the Seahawks kick the shit out of everybody else. The losses kind of flurl off into the wind a little bit. It's been a pretty good year for me, I'm not gonna lie, as a Texans and a Seahawks guy. So, but yeah, the Rams played a game and the Cardinals were there. If you guys don't know, the Cardinals have been basically they came out and finally said it. Something that I think if you've been paying attention all season, you've known that this was going to happen. They are shutting down Kyler Murray for the rest of the season. I'm trying to get this glare out of my glasses, guys. Sorry, I'm trying to get an angle where this white square is not in my glasses. But yeah, they are shutting down Kyler Murray for the rest of the season, which should come to a shock to absolutely no one. The Cardinals have just been racking up injuries as time has gone on. It's injuries to the offensive line. It's injuries at the wide receiver position. And then, of course, the running back position has been like really up in the air overall in terms of the offense. The defense looked pretty good so far this year. There's a reason that the Cardinals have had a bunch of one-score games that they have subsequently lost all year, and I think that is, I don't know how hopeful Cardinals fans are for a good football team in any upcoming season, but they do have some bright spots in their team, and a lot of it is defensive. You have to wonder how long that's going to last, but yeah. That's what they got going for them, and of course that's why they gave up 45 points in this game. It's also because the Rams are easily the most balanced team in the NFL. Matthew Stafford combined with Kyren Williams is a deadly combination. Also, apparently nobody can defend Puka Nacua. Kind of crazy. Who would have thought the guy who had the greatest rookie wide receiver wide receiver season in the history of the NFL is a pretty good football player. So, I'm not going to go through anything that happened in this game because it was not worth your time, and most importantly, it was not worth my time. So the Rams did their thing, essentially what happened in this one. And the Cardinals turned the ball over, giving the Rams extra possessions. And one thing about the Rams, they do not pull punches against anybody. I'm assuming that's a Sean McVay thing to try and get ready for the playoffs. It is to work on the team being able to, finish at all times throughout the course of a game. But yeah, this was pretty bad. This is the one that everything just kind of fell through the bottom on this one. This could have easily ended up in the heartbreakers category, but the Cardinals have already been heartbroken all season. They've been down bad all season, and it's not getting any better. They got 4 more games this season, and I'm sure they're super excited for it. The Rams are going to have to fight to get the NFC West Championship because they still have to play the Seahawks one more time, and I think they're done after that. But yeah, man, it's this game was sad. A lot of dudes are going to get a lot of opportunities in the next coming weeks for the Cardinals to go out there and play. So, but if you are a person who has a podcast or does media stuff, interview your Arizona Cardinals friends. They can tell you a lot about what it looks like for a team that is kind of in the weird place that they are. There's a real possibility that Kyler Murray is not going to be on the Cardinals relatively soon. But we'll see. Moving on, Snooze Fest categories. I put the Los Angeles Chargers Philadelphia Eagles game that was on Monday Night Football. I can tell you, and I mean this wholeheartedly from the bottom of my heart, just because the game went into overtime does not mean it was exciting. Vast majority of this game was absolute disaster, top to bottom, for both teams. We have the Eagles on one side where they're doing this weird thing. Well, it's not even weird, man. They're not even winning games anymore because the biggest issue was 2 years ago. They were winning games and they were very clearly going to the playoffs, and a lot of people didn't have faith they were going to be successful in the playoffs, and they were not. They got bounced in the first round. Remember this. This was then followed by them winning the Super Bowl. This similar thing is happening right now, except the Eagles are not like winning the games on the back half of the season. Are the Chargers a playoff team? Yes, they are currently a playoff team. They're also a playoff caliber team when it's all said and done. But the vast majority of this game was spent, I'm sure, with Eagles fans yelling and screaming at what is the remnants of a television because they can just sense in their Eagles' bones that Jalen Hurts had thrown another interception. When this game was all said and done, Jalen Hurts threw 4 interceptions. He threw 3 in the first half, and combine that with the 3 and outs that the Eagles had in the first half, that basically ended up, that's why they did not score a touchdown until the third quarter. So it was pretty wild overall, just because Jalen Hurts his whole deal is this whole time, and I think maybe it's just me being delusional to a certain degree, because Jalen Hurts has had moments like this before in his time period, in his time when he was in college and when he's been in the pros, where he's looked amazing and he could throw dimes and all this kind of stuff like that, and vast majority of his success stems from his ability to prevent or not even entertain the idea of turning the ball over. That came undone in this game, and they still almost won this game. That shows you just how stupidly good this Eagles team is. If they could like string together, I don't know, like 8 positive plays in a row, and that's kind of like the message out of this game. The other thing is damn, dude. It's one thing to lose your left tackle. It's a whole nother thing to lose your left and your right tackle. And the gap between them being, borderline all-pro type guys. Like Joe Alt was very clearly in contention to be some sort of all-pro for this season. And then, of course, Rashawn Slater is an all-pro left tackle. My guy Rashawn out there, left tackle. I used to cover him when he was in high school. I feel like I have to say that every time I say, like, my guy. I'm not, like, actually friends with Rashawn. I talk to him sometimes, like, very sparingly. I talk to him when he gets hurt sometimes and, send encouragement and everything like that, but we're not like close or anything. But I still always root for him. Also, he plays offensive line. I was a shitty left guard in college, and so I always got a special place in my heart for the good offensive lineman up front. And it's part of why the Eagles are slightly frustrating sometimes. Anyway, the Chargers, no problem here. No problem in terms of like actually having successful offense. Vast majority of this game, Justin Herbert spent on the run, and a lot of that was due to the fact that the Eagles were just killing them up the middle. It wasn't even off the edges in terms of like the pressure or anything like that. They were destroying them up the middle. They kept sending linebacker blitzes. Plus, when they tried to run the ball, there was some early success. Like Kamari Vidal had a huge run at the beginning of this game in the first quarter or whatever. But as time went on, they had over 100 yards rushing, but nobody no individual running back had over. I think it was like 60 yards from Omarion Hampton, who did score in this game, but for the most part, they both had like two massive runs, and then they got shut down for the rest of the game because apparently Nakobe Dean and Zach Vaughn are like the two best linebackers in the NFL when on the field together. They were amazing throughout the course of this game. But overall, the lack of tackles obviously sets up failures in other departments on the offensive line, and it subsequently resulted in 7 sacks for the Eagles when this game was all said and done. Because as we all know, the Eagles have one of the best defenses, top 5, maybe top 3 in the NFL defenses overall, and now their secondary is kind of healthy again, so they're basically back at full strength. And it showed in this one. Lag McConkey didn't even catch a pass in this game until hold on, it's on my notes somewhere. He didn't catch a pass until the fourth quarter, bro. Crazy work on the part of the Eagles at every single level. They had Godot kind of locked up. The Godson? I should know. We did like a whole little special thing on him for Player of the Week, but I still don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, their new star tight end. But yeah, it was pretty bad overall for the Chargers, and they still won this game. And I don't know if that's more about the Eagles, because at the end of the day, the Eagles turned the ball over 5 times in this game, and one of them was a double turnover play, which hadn't happened in like 30-something years or whatever. So it was Jalen Hurts threw an interception to Deshaun Hand. Yes, that Deshaun Hand, the defensive lineman. That was like a 5-star guy coming out of high school, went to Alabama, all that kind of stuff like that. Anyway, he gets the ball popped out while he's returning the ball. Jalen Hurts tries to pick it up. He gets the ball forced out of his hands, and then somebody else recovers it. So, double turnover in a single play is always tough. But also, I will say this: it's not like it was. So it's technically like they only turned the ball over 4 times when it was all said and done. But yeah, 4 turnovers for the Chargers defense in this game, and they lost by a singular possession overall. A lot of that was, 100% of it was due to the amazing defense that the Eagles were able to play. I think they surrendered 1 touchdown in the entirety of this game, and then in the second half, the Chargers did not get into the Eagles' red zone, and when they got into the Eagles' half, the best they could do was the game-tying field goal to make it 19-19 and go into overtime. In overtime, as you can see on the scoreboard, the Chargers didn't score a touchdown there either. But it did turn out that the Eagles' pass rush can only rush like they are the greatest pass rush in the history of the NFL for 4 football quarters. They could not do it for 5. They were actually able to kind of get some breathing room to a certain degree in overtime because of I'm assuming they are human. I believe that the Eagles defensive line is human in some way, shape, or form. But that being said, man, that came down to they get the field goal, the Eagles get the ball back. They're kind of moving the ball because in the back half of the second half of this game, they finally get into the end zone because of Saquon Barkley, who, by the way, had a really good game. Had 121 yards? 122 yards and a touchdown in this game, and the touchdown came off of a fake. I wouldn't even say it was a fake tush push. It was the tush push to pitch. So instead of going for the Eagles tush push, they got up in I formation, forced all the defensive players almost in between the 2 tight ends, right, before they snap the ball like they do like 1,000,001 times, and they flicked the ball over to Saquon Barkley, who I don't know if you guys know this or not. He's pretty good at football. He's even better when there's nobody in front of him. So he runs, I think it was like 38 yards for a touchdown in this one. And if you were going to say that there was any positive thing that came out of this game for the Eagles offensively, they got 100 yards receiving from A.J. Brown off multiple catches, even though one of his catches did result in one of his attempted catches resulted in the interception for Jalen Hurts. It was a guy named Cameron Hart who got his first interception in the NFL. He got drafted last year. He got his first interception in the NFL off of a I don't know, man. The ball popped off of A.J. Brown's hands when he was jumping up in the air, and it went right into Cameron Hart's hands. So that was pretty massive for him overall. And it was massive for the Chargers because it kept them in this game. Their offense was just like non-existent, except when it came to like kicking field goals. Cameron Dicker, whoever had him in fantasy, must have murdered in fantasy football this past week. So that being said, going back to overtime, the Eagles are on their drive. They get within the 50-yard line of the Chargers. They get all the way down to like the 30-yard line of the Chargers. And then Jalen Hurts, for the final time that night, throws the ball. It gets tipped up in the air by, I believe, Cameron Hart, and then intercepted by a defensive back that's defending Devontae Smith. And the Chargers run off into the night with a victory at home, basically locking up their wild card 2 spot in the AFC playoff picture. The NFC, the Eagles still hold the NFC East because the Cowboys are their only real competition when it's all said and done, and they lost on Thursday Night Football. We'll talk about that a little bit later. It was probably the best Thursday Night Football game of the entire season, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, the Cowboys all but done in the playoff race. The Commanders out of there, you know what I mean? And the Giants have been out for a long time. The Giants are officially eliminated from playoff contention, and it shows. I mean, we all saw what they were looking like. I'm not going to talk about the Giants because they didn't play this week, and I don't feel like talking about sad football. But yeah, this is a brutal, absolutely brutal loss for the Eagles. It affects their overall record, but it doesn't change what's going to happen. They're going to win the NFC East. They're going to go to the playoffs. And more than likely are not going to perform well in the playoffs because they cannot have 3 consecutive plays in a row where good things happen. This is the first time all season where we've seen back-to-back big chunk run plays from the Eagles. So maybe that's a sign of hope. Also, Jalen Hurts was making a distinct effort to throw the ball to A.J. Brown, which means that it's one less week that A.J. Brown goes upside his head. Anyway, but yeah, that's all I really got out of this one. The 7 sacks, the 5 turnovers, and still having this game be close is kind of, I always take it as a bad sign for the team that got the 5 turnovers and what they turned it into. But when you watch the game, it was clearly a product of what the Eagles defense is about. But yeah, 5 extra possessions and only losing by a field goal is some next level type shit, man. Moving on, other games that happened, another NFC East team involved in this one. This is the NFC West. I don't know why I keep saying East. NFC West team. The Seattle Seahawks played the Atlanta Falcons. I'm sure everybody was super thrilled about this one. Very strange combination, but a lot of traveling for the Seahawks this season, man. They've gone to Florida twice, I believe. And yeah, because they played the Buccaneers. Oh no, the Buccaneers came to Seattle. They've gone to Florida twice, if I'm not mistaken, overall. But the Seattle to Florida flight is like the longest flight in the NFL. So, and apparently Oregon's going to have to do that because Oregon's playing Miami in the college football playoffs. So long ass flight for them too. So they should be used to it. They're in the Big Ten, right? Yeah, everybody's in the Big Ten now. Whatever. Seahawks 37, Atlanta Falcons 9. Kind of a miracle they scored the 9 points based off what I saw. So the Seahawks did the thing where they run the ball. They also did the thing where they forced turnovers. Kirk Cousins, by the way, was quarterbacking in this game, which should give you all the indication you need as to why the Seahawks scored 37 points, right? So, yeah, that's just how it is, man. This is one of those games where the Seahawks got to play their style of football, and they dismantled yet another bad team. It feels like they've played so many bad teams this season, and it doesn't, I don't know, man. You got to worry about stuff like later on in the season, right? The Seahawks have had injuries, they've had problems with people like going out. They've had problems and they've had injuries this season, but sometimes you have to worry about like, hey man, they're not really playing like a ton of competition on the way to the playoffs, and they're all but locked into a playoff spot. That is saying a lot, but it is true. They are also tied with the Rams record-wise, and they still have to play the Rams one more time, but as we all know, there is but one team that Sam Darnold cannot overcome. It is the ghost of New York, and then of course the LA Rams. So hopefully the Seahawks are not cruising for a sweep. That would suck because I think they would be the only, other than the Cardinals. Yeah, I think they would be the only team that gets swept by the Rams. Anyway, that's a future issue. That's a snooze fest game, 37-9 snooze fest score. It is as bad as it looked. I like to say on this. I like to say on this show all the time, the score is deceptive. This one was not. This one was the truth, up front and very honest. So moving on, Jacksonville Jaguars played the Indianapolis Colts. The big thing coming out of this one, in case nobody told you, or in case you've been living under a rock, or in case you only listen to this podcast to get NFL information, the Colts have a quarterback named Daniel Jones. He's been pretty good all season. As a matter of fact, he probably should still end up winning Most Improved Player when it's all said and done. But Daniel Jones has been playing with a broken leg for multiple weeks, despite everybody else only finding out about it, last week or 2 weeks ago or something like that. It's very clear because in this game he tore his Achilles, which is a sign of anybody overcompensation. So his leg's been broken for a while. I don't know how he's been walking around casually with his leg broken. I understand that is the non-weight-bearing part, the non-weight-bearing bone in his leg, but it's still a broken leg. It's a broken leg. Anyway, this game, unfortunately, is a massive win for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who now currently hold the lead in the AFC South. They will not end up with the lead because the Texans will be smacking them around one more time this season. I promise you that. Also, the crazy, remember how I told you guys, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, when the Texans went to Indianapolis and how they have like this stupid record of like the Texans had like 16 games in a row. They're like 17-2 in the last 18 times they had gone to Indianapolis until the last like 5 years where they've won like 5 in a row or something like that. But yeah, this is one of those examples. You go look at the record. The Colts going to Jacksonville makes the Colts like a bad football team no matter how good they are. So it's almost ominously fitting that the Colts season basically comes undone in Jacksonville, Florida, like it has the last, 15 years at some point or whatever. But yeah, the Jaguars in this one, they're able to run the ball successfully. It's so interesting when you see teams like the Rams and the Colts because their biggest attribute is that they are a balanced team. Their offense feeds their defense feeds their offense, their run game feeds their passing game helps their running game. Their pass coverage helps out their pass rush helps out their pass coverage. And when you disturb the delicate balance, everything comes apart. Whereas there are teams in the NFL that are like one-dimensional, like they try and strive for balance, but they are a team that is one-dimensional, like the Kansas City Chiefs. They are a team that has a good defense, a really good defense, and their offense, everything is centered around Patrick Mahomes, regardless of how well the run game is going. Not many teams in the NFL can just sit there and have their quarterback square up, snap the ball, and make stuff happen every single play. But when you see the Colts play, a lot of what was getting Jonathan Taylor close to competing for the MVP, which is the most unfortunate part about this. Obviously, it's really unfortunate that Daniel Jones has suffered 2 major leg injuries in one season. Fucking insane, bro. I gain respect for the guy, man. He played with a broken leg. Obviously, if you're his friend or somebody who cares about him, you would tell him not to do that. Obviously, Daniel Jones is a football player and has been his entire life. If he can walk or run or kind of jog a little bit, he's going to go out there and try and play because it's an opportunity to go out there and win a football game. That's what football players do. But to have a debilitating mobility injury like tearing your Achilles and then to also have a broken leg, essentially he won't be able to, I don't know, man. In terms of he's going to have one leg in a cast and one leg is going to be in a boot, right? So he was already in the boot on the sideline, but for the most part, this game went off the rails almost instantly. It was already tough to begin with because the Jaguars defense is for real. They generate a ton of turnovers, and they did in this game as well. The Colts quarterback Riley Leonard came into the game he hasn't taken a snap all season. He's the third string quarterback in this one, and he did have one drive where he kind of looked all right. But that has not stopped the Colts from putting themselves in the position they are right now. I'm sure you've seen it. It's probably been all over the news. 44-year-old Phillip Rivers is coming out of retirement while he is currently a semifinalist for the NFL Hall of Fame, which I think does that automatically DQ him from his current ballot run? Because you can only be up for the Hall of Fame 5 years removed from your career. So in theory, if Phillip Rivers is a first ballot Hall of Famer, he won't be a Hall of Famer until he's 48 or 49, which is tough. But yeah, he's a grandfather, and I think one of his kids is playing D1 football in a couple of months. Once this season is over, his kid is already committed to play. One of his kids is committed to play D1 football. So, yeah, man, I used to always make the joke, do you know how much how much eggs cost for 18 kids? So, I guess it costs a lot. Or he's just annoying the shit out of his wife, which is totally understandable too. Shout out to her. Shout out to Phillip Rivers, man. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's sad because their season's like going down the drain. Their season's gone down the drain. It's hard for me to see because there's no telling what Phillip Rivers is going to be able to come out there and do. Is he going to be able to run an offense that he hasn't run all season? Who knows? Riley Leonard would come off as the guy who's in the best situation possible to go out there and lead, but they're already starting to seed the ground that Phillip Rivers could be starting as soon as this Sunday because Riley Leonard got hurt during the course of this game. Overall, it is the Colts making all the headlines after a massive Jags win because they are in the midst of one of the best seasons they have ever had. Their record on the road is better than it's ever been, and they're flat out, despite the fact that their quarterback is been kind of an anchor to the rest of the team in terms of like capping what they're capable of doing. He came out here in this game against a Colts defense that's pretty good, but a Colts defense that admittedly got overtaxed throughout the course of this game, right? Like they were on the field for the most that they've been on the field all season, essentially, other than when they played in that Steelers game. But yeah, man, to go out there and get 36 points against a divisional opponent, obviously they have the edge too because the Colts always lose when they go to Florida. But maybe it's the sunlight. You think that? Whatever. Jags have the lead in the AFC South temporarily, in my opinion, and the Colts continue the spiral, like a real spiral. Very Eagles-like, not Eagles-like, but the realest spiral in the game right now. They've lost 4 of their last 5, if I'm not mistaken, and this is only the beginning of the toughest part of their entire schedule. So, great time to have your backup quarterback coming in, or a practice squad, or a potential Hall of Fame quarterback who's been sitting on the couch since 2020, right? I'm assuming Phillip Rivers has done some sort of exercise. He does have kids that he's got to look after, so that's exercise in and of itself in some ways. But moving on to the other snooze fest games, the Broncos played the Raiders. Final score is 24-17. When this is all said and done, I'm gonna tell you this right now. I would love it if somebody would tell me I don't have to watch Broncos football anymore. I rarely say this. I hate the way that they play football. Bo Nix, throughout the course of this game, this is a divisional matchup, so these teams are real familiar with each other. Bo Nix in this game threw multiple passes to wide receivers for like 1-yard gains. And Evan Ingram, who's a tight end but a wide receiver, for 1-yard gains. It was It was really frustrating. I've been saying it all season. I think it's finally gotten to the point where it's pushed me over the edge. I can't do it anymore. And I don't know how Broncos fans are doing it. It's because they're winning the games, obviously. But I don't want the Broncos on primetime anymore, because we all keep thinking that like one of these games, it's finally going to click and they're going to play 4 full quarters and all this kind of shit like that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they just play ugly football. And maybe that's just what it is, man. They are the win ugly team. And they played against the Raiders. The Raiders are a divisional opponent, but they still, at no point were the Raiders actually competitive in this one. Geno Smith gets pulled for Kenny Pickett. They start subbing in a bunch of the younger players in, which they should have been doing like 6 weeks ago. But whatever. People have been talking about it already, but Pete Carroll, I think it's just fan stuff. The Pete Carroll experience is not going great for all the Vegas fans, but I have to ask the question, when you get rid of Josh Jacobs and you sign a free agent quarterback but don't sign any wide receivers to go along with it, like Jacoby Myers was on the team already, but you trade him away, and then the offensive line looks the way it does, and the defense kind of like doesn't have any investment into it. Like, what could you possibly have expected this season to be other than what it is right now? But, hope springs eternal. That's how football fans work. But, yeah, man, this game was ugly up, like, the entirety of it. It was actually, like, kind of close until Marvin Mims hit a crazy punt return touchdown in I want to say in, like, the second quarter. And they got up 14-7. And then the Raiders didn't score again until the fourth quarter when Kenny Pickett threw like a real dime to a wide receiver who had 0 catches in his NFL career. He was a rookie this year. I think it was like Kendrick Robinson. And his first catch was like a 40-yard touchdown pass. So, got to keep that in mind. It's like Amaleus Zaccheaus. His first, he's a wide receiver for the Commanders now, but he used to play for the Falcons, and his first catch was like a 60-yard touchdown. Just like Matt Ryan's first pass in the NFL was like a 40-yard touchdown or something like that. Anyway, got to keep an eye on that guy. He may be up to big things. Who knows? But he'll always be able to say his first catch in the NFL was a touchdown, which, he didn't have to wait 5 years like Jacoby Myers did to catch his first one in the NFL. Moving on. Oh, by the way, going back to the Jaguars, don't know why, but your guy, Trevor Lawrence, loves Jacoby Myers. I'd love to hear why that is the case, especially considering, Jacoby Myers was a part of a wide receiver group with the Patriots that a lot of people didn't think was all that good, and now he's actually, I think he's a really good wide receiver. He's been good since he was in New England, and then the second that he goes to Vegas, he gets like multiple touchdowns after having 0 touchdowns for like 4 years in the NFL. Whatever. The Broncos won. I hated watching every single second of it. And I think a lot of people hate watching the Broncos. If you hate watching the Broncos play football and you want to join a class action lawsuit to prevent them from being on television anymore, just drop it in the comments. Just say, I hate the Broncos. Orange Crush. Crush the orange. Yeah, let's do that. The Dolphins played the Jets. Actually, I have notes in this one. Because the Dolphins are like the first, they're the first of many teams that are in a weird position right now for the playoffs. The Dolphins are 6-7 now, and are also the 4th best win streak in the NFL, which is kind of wild. There's obviously what the Patriots have going on, and then the Texans have like a 5-game win streak, and the Dolphins are on a 4-game win streak. They got 4 in a row. They got 4 in a row after beating the Jets in this game. Let's tell the truth. The Jets have been tragically bad all season, and they've also had a ton of close losses, which is tough to watch when you're a Jets fan overall. Justin Fields and the offense have wasted a good amount of the best defensive performances we've seen out of the Jets this season, and they've found themselves in a ton. And I want to say it's like 7 or 8 one-possession games and lost most of them. So they played the Broncos pretty close and almost beat them. Tyrod Taylor is in at QB currently, but he does not finish this game. Go figure. He pulls his groin, and they end up having to sub in Brady Cook, but we will talk about that a little bit later on. The Dolphins open this game with 3 touchdowns in a row, essentially, and then they get an interception. So they get 2 touchdowns, an interception from Dotson, who was the linebacker who called the game-winning play last week for Minkah Fitzpatrick to get that interception and run it back to the end zone. And he called it from the field when the when the green dot was messing up in his helmet. But he's that guy. He got an interception this week in his legs, like by squeezing his thighs together to hold it up off the turf. So that was pretty dope. And he gets an interception. He gets 2 touchdowns, the Dolphins do, an interception, and then they get a touchdown off of the interception. So they're rolling. It's 21-0, and it almost finishes 21-0 in the first quarter of this game. And then Isaiah Williams, who, if you guys have not heard, he's the one guy that we've talked about in terms of the offense for the Jets outside of Breece Hall, because he keeps killing it at the punt returner position. He got his 2nd punt return touchdown of the season in this game, and it made the game 21-7. This game started and finished brutal for the Jets overall. Like I said, Tyrod Taylor doesn't make it to the end of this one. He doesn't actually make it to the field for the 3rd drive of the Jets game in this one. Brady Cook is in there, and he's a rookie the Jets drafted, and I have to wonder, why didn't he get in the game sooner? Not because Brady went out here and did such a great job, but the idea that you saw Justin Fields for 6 weeks and you just I mean, at no point other than week 1 of the season did Justin Fields look like he finally had gotten over the hump. And maybe you could say that that's in part because of the offensive line performance from the Jets or anything like that. But at some point, you got to move on to the next guy, man, right? Justin Fields goes out. They try and get Tyrod Taylor in there, and he keeps getting hurt. And it's one of those things that just blows my mind. They have a rookie quarterback who obviously, he was like a Missouri, he's like a 5th-round pick or whatever, but you're trying to figure out why. You're trying to figure out if he could be the quarterback for the Jets, because at some point you got to admit that it's not going to be Tyrod next year. It's probably not going to be Justin Fields next year, and you need to know if Brady Cook is going to be in the mix, or if you're going to be a team that's drafting a quarterback. Which, by the way, don't forget, the Jets are in hot contention for a top 3 pick when it's all said and done. They're tied with 6 teams that have 3 wins, but don't know why he didn't get a shot sooner, but to figure out if he had some juice, trying to figure out if he could really put it together. Versus the Dolphins, he could not. He had 2 fumbles. One was a strip sack from Chop Robinson, and then another one was very clearly unfamiliarity with the gooch of the center. So he pulled his hands out early, right when the center was trying to snap the ball into his hands, and it doesn't go the way that he wants it to. Anyway, it falls down to the ground. He's able to recover it or whatever, but it does set up a longer 3rd down play, which, by the way, the theme of this game was the Jets get in the 3rd down, and then magically Bradley Chubb appears right next to Brady Cook. That happened 4 times. So the rest of this game looks a lot like that. The Jets' best drive in this game ends with an interception in the red zone. So yeah, it's one of those games. The Dolphins proceed as they do. We all know this. They have their union-mandated lunch break. They took off 6 possessions in this game. So I'll also point this out. I'll give them credit for this. Maybe, they didn't take off early for lunch like they did last week or whatever. But they did have Devon Achane, who hurt his ribs in the course of this game and in the 2nd quarter. And so they spent a good chunk of time trying to run the ball out, but it was with Jalen Wright, who looked pretty good at a couple of points, and it was also Ollie Gordon who fumbled the ball, and I don't think he got back into the game after he did that. But it is interesting that Jalen Wright, who I think used to play for the 49ers, which is probably why he's on this roster with Mike McDaniels. But anyway, legit, the Dolphins had 7 possessions. They scored those 3 touchdowns that I mentioned at the top of the game. It was 21-7 at the end of the 1st quarter, and then there were 7 more possessions. Out of those 7 possessions, the Dolphins scored 1 time, and it was a field goal. So it was, like I said, the lunch break. It's just what they do, man. They got to take off the middle of the game, and then they come back. They come back. They're well rested, refreshed. They didn't eat any fast food during the lunch break because they show up in the 4th quarter and they start kicking ass for the most part. But I have to say, there's a small percentage chance that when you take off 2 quarters of an NFL football game, that the other team might kick your ass in that during that gap. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how well you do in the 4th quarter, which is exactly how the Dolphins got into the situation where they need to win 8 games in a row to even make the playoffs, and they're also not even in real contention. They're actually not in contention at all to win the AFC East. So yeah, maybe it's something to do with the fact that they take off 2 quarters a game. One day they'll play a complete football game and then they'll be good, I guess. Anyway, shout out to the Dolphins. They got this dub against a team that we all thought they were supposed to win against, but you never know with the Dolphins. Like I said, they had an outside shot. They have an outside shot of getting that 3rd wild card spot, and I think that's what their ultimate goal has to be when it's all said and done, because the Patriots have taken the division championship as far as I'm concerned, and the Bills have taken the 2nd wild card spot next to underneath the Texans when it comes to record. And then that means the 3rd wild card spot is up for grabs for a bunch of other people. And if the Texans take the AFC South, maybe it'll be the Jaguars if they can make that happen. But the last 4 games are kind of nuts for the Dolphins. Overall, they might lose all 4 of them. They're playing the Steelers, who had a good showing versus the Ravens this past weekend and have been a roller coaster all season. But maybe with the way that the Dolphins play when they take off 2 quarters in a game, they're more than likely not going to do so hot. But I think, they play the Steelers. They play the Bengals. They're probably going to lose to the Bengals. The Bengals defense has played a lot better this season in the back half since Joe Burrow came back. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the fact that they don't feel the need to go out there and completely shut out their opponent to be able to win the game, right? The Buccaneers, who are spiraling right now, legitimately, like spiraling out of control, like spiraling out of the playoffs as well. And then they finish off the season playing against the Patriots. Maybe they'll be the third team that ever beats the Patriots this entire season. Who knows? Only time will tell, but it is there's a real possibility they lose all 4 of those games based off the way that we've seen them play. And if Devon Achane's injury to his ribs is more serious than we think because he didn't come back in this game, and I think maybe that had a lot to do with the score, which is smart on the part of the Dolphins as an organization to not do that. And it also had, also the run game was actually still working. But yeah, they need the Bills or the Texans to basically shit themselves to have a chance. I think they need the Bills more to shit themselves. The Jets kind of have been screwing themselves the last couple of weeks because they've actually been winning games. And that was with Tyrod Taylor, obviously. But they are currently tied with 5 other teams for the 3rd overall pick. But they did beat the Browns, who are also tied for the 3rd overall pick. So I have to imagine if head-to-head works in the other for Tankathon and all that kind of stuff like that, that weighs into the draft order. We'll see. Because there's still a lot of games to be played for the Jets. They have 4 more games left. And I'm sure they're counting down the seconds until they can leave that building and never come back for a lot of those guys. Move on to better things in their lives, but whatever. Moving on to the heartbreaker category. Yes, we're done with the snooze fest games. Now we start talking about the real shit. The real sad stuff. You thought the snooze fest was sad? This is real sad shit. These are teams that had hopes. They had dreams. They had admirations. So we're going to start with the Vikings taking on the Commanders. The final score in that game was 31-0. Real heartbreaker on this one. Both of these teams thought they were going to be playoff teams again to start the season. I think the Vikings maybe thought they'd get a little bit of motion. They could be a little bit better. Maybe NFC championship game type stuff. Obviously, the Commanders would have loved to go back-to-back, and they think that they got a superstar in Jaden Daniels at the QB position, which they may have because he had moments where he looked good in this game, but reality comes for us all. Gravity is undefeated, and it is beating Jaden Daniels' ass on a pretty regular basis. So, final score, 31-0. Let's take it from the top on this one. Massive disappointment for both of these teams. They are both essential. The Commanders are for sure out. The Commanders are on an 8-game losing streak after this game, and the Minnesota Vikings are out of there because it's the Bears and the Packers who are at the top of the NFC North, and they're both taking up wildcard spots. So it'd be kind of crazy if the Vikings got that 3rd spot, but it's super unlikely considering the NFC West exists. So, I mean, it's unlikely that, well, no. There's a small chance that the Bears are the team that ends up with the 3rd wildcard spot, which would be crazy. NFC playoffs are going to be wild because there's going to be a lot of teams that are really good in the mix. In the AOC, you cannot necessarily say that all the time. But the Commanders a year ago were 1 game away from playing in the Super Bowl, and today they got shut out. For the Vikings did something crazy that hasn't been done in 33 years. The reason I know it's 33 years is because it hasn't been done since the year I was born. They got shut out last week, and then they shut somebody out the week following. That never happens. Welcome to the NFL. So weird. But yeah, this is the Commanders were one of the better offenses in the NFL. They had this game. They were one of the better offenses in the NFL. They were one of the better offenses in the NFL last season. And it feels like when you go and you watch this game that they played, it is a microcosm of how their entire season is gone. Jaden Daniels starts this game, does not finish it. The defense gets absolutely demolished, mainly because of the amount of turnovers that happened throughout this one. And that's offensively, the amount of turnovers that happened throughout this one. And it puts the defense in a bad spot where they got to go out there and play defense already with their back up against the wall. But yeah, they had 3 turnovers throughout the course of this game. 2 of them end up inside of the red zone before the defense even comes out there to play defense. So Jaden doesn't finish this game. Like I said, he re-injured his elbow. and the run game gets completely shut down a year after they traded away Brian Robinson Jr. And in case you wanted a quick checkup on him, he's the number 2 running back for the San Francisco 49ers, and he's killing it. When he goes out there, when he gets a chance to play, he runs hard, and he has not been hurt this season. So who would have thought? The Commanders' first drive of this game, they get all the way down to the 2-yard line of the Vikings. By the way, this first drive is the best drive that the Commanders will have the entirety of this game. They get down to the 2-yard line, and then it becomes a turnover on downs. The Vikings get the ball, but yeah, like I said, best drive for them ends up with turnover on downs. Right at the goal line, right? J.J. McCarthy, to his credit, was diming up the Commanders' defense throughout the course of this game, and because they were actually doing a really good job of bottling up Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason to begin with. And I feel like that's kind of the theme of this. The Commanders' defense actually did a good job in the first half of this game. The second half is a different story. As the game goes on, the Commanders just couldn't pressure J.J. McCarthy, at all. And so, just like most quarterbacks in the NFL, J.J. McCarthy, in a clean pocket, is able to dime people up. He's able to throw the ball around. In particular, for the Vikings, the tight ends were killing the Commanders. Is it Josh Oliver? Is it Josh or Cam? It's Cam Oliver and TJ Hawkinson were killing them underneath, man, because they were the delayed release valves, but they were also the check downs that were 10 yards down the field. So when they caught the ball, they were not only in a gap of the zone to the Commander's zone, but they were able to turn upfield and go and go get busy on them. But on the other side, on the flip side, the Vikings defense essentially did what they've been doing all season, and that is blitz the shit out of anybody in front of them. Jaden Daniels, second-year quarterback in the NFL, and honestly, he looked really good against the blitz to start off with, but then they started kind of mixing it up a little bit. So they'd have times where they'd send 5 people, they'd have times where they'd send 6, sometimes they'd go cover 0. There was a lot of times where they would bluff edge defenders and send more people up the middle, in particular Alex Van Ginkel. It was this vicious cycle, and then right when you think the blitz is coming, on third down or whatever, they drop into coverage. And so now you got to figure out how to find a gap to throw the ball into on 3rd and 10 with 8 people at the first down marker, right? And nobody and 2 safeties over the top. So it was really difficult for them overall to try and catch any type of momentum throughout the course of this game, which is why the score ended up the way it did. It was just this constant, it was rinse and repeat with them. Eventually, the rinse and repeat turned up some gold for him. Alex Van Ginkel feels like this is the 3rd time I've had to describe this the entire season, but he floats down. He runs a flat part of a zone. So usually the flat zone is you stay around the line of scrimmage or under 5 yards and under, and your job is to cover the running backs as they're trying to leak out of the backfield to go run swing routes and check downs and stuff like that. But Van Ginkel's running his underneath the line of scrimmage. So he's running his almost even or behind, or he's behind the center when he's running his flat routes. And so when you try and throw the check down, he's standing directly in the passing lane. And you can't see it because, say it with me, they're blitzing, right? So there's 5 people rushing at you. You feel the pressure. You turn to your right. You try to throw the ball out to your running back. And look who's there. Some dude with this crazy blonde hair. He deflects a pass up into the air, runs it back all the way to the 10-yard line or whatever. And that sets up another Vikings touchdown from Cam Oliver, the tight end. And that pretty much sums it up, man. When Jaden goes out, they send Marcus Mariota in the second play that Marcus Mariota throws in the second pass that Marcus throws in this game, which I think is the 3rd play that he's in there for. It's intercepted, and they run it back. It's not a touchdown or anything like that, but it does get them within field goal range immediately. But just to kind of sum it up for you, Jaden Daniels completed 9 passes in the entirety of this game. I think only 3 of them went for over 10 yards. Marcus Mariota completed 2 passes. So 2 completions, 1 interception. You're not going to win the game. And that's what happened. They cooked them, man. And then in the back half of this one, the turnovers piled up. plus the amount of time that the defense was out there on the field, Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones started pounding the shit out of that rock. Aaron Jones got like a huge gain down the right-hand sideline at one point that instantaneously put the Vikings in field goal range. Jordan Mason is a bigger guy, and Bobby Wagner had it. I mean, Bobby was flying all over the place, but it was, I wouldn't say flying, but Bobby was, he kept getting caught up in the wash at times because the Vikings offensive line was getting up to the second level. And he couldn't shed the blocks. There was a lot of times where, the ball goes the opposite direction or the ball's going where Bobby initially was, but the play drew the way the zone works is somebody ran into his zone, so he went to go cover him, and then they throw the ball behind him. So it was tough, man. It was tough for the Commanders. I'm not a Commanders fan, so it wasn't tough for me. But they end up losing this whole thing. And it's 31-0. It's probably the most embarrassing loss of the entire season for an NFL team because the Commanders did have high hopes. They got their guy back, and he comes back, and they look worse somehow than when Marcus Mariota was in there at quarterback. So we'll see. People are talking about firing Dan Quinn. I don't think that's going to really solve any problems. I think the problem is definitely going to be more of the personnel stuff, but, what do I know? I'm just some dumb guy on the internet. Oh my. This is the oh my category, the games that have the interesting results that kind of gives some kind of insight into what this team is capable of doing. In a lot of these cases, we'll explain it. But the oh my category is the games that have like weird results, not necessarily upsets, but weird results that could mean something later down the road or something weird about this game. In this case, the first game in this category is a little bit of both. So the first game in this one is the Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 24-20, the Saints win it. Crazy, right? The Buccaneers, at the time of this recording, held the NFC South playoff spot because they were a division leader. That is not the case anymore after Thursday Night Football, I think. I think they're tied with the Panthers. And actually, they're not even tied because the Buccaneers are 7-7 and the Panthers are 7-6 because it's Thursday Night Football and they played first. So at the very least, there's a chance that the Panthers at the end of this weekend could have a standalone playoff spot all to themselves. Kind of crazy. The Buccaneers do have to play the Panthers one more time this season, and it's pretty wild. It has become highly unlikely that the Buccaneers will be holding on to a playoff spot unless something changes drastically. They got Mike Evans back tonight, which is going to be huge for them. They've lost four of their last 5 games, and they have multiple blowouts in those 4 losses that they've had. That's due to a ton of issues. Baker Mayfield's had some injuries from all the time he's had to spend running this season. The offensive line has been slowly eroding away in terms of like the quality of play. And as time has gone on, something has come out. And I think I talked about this when the Buccaneers played the Patriots. They give up explosive plays. They don't just give up explosive plays. They give up the most explosive plays in the NFL. The Buccaneers are the kings of playing really well on first and second down, and then on third down, it is like a fucking street race. They give up the most explosive plays. They give up the most yards per play in the NFL, which is brutal because we see them make good defensive plays all the time throughout the course of a game, but when it comes down to it, they are way more prone to giving up explosive plays by definition, or any play that is for 20 yards or more in the NFL. So they lead the league in that, and that tells you just how bad it is. They have also had a tough time getting big explosive plays themselves. They are down to Emeka Egbuka, and at one point it was just Emeka out there. Now it is a combination of Emeka, Chris Godwin, Bucky Irving is back. They did look a little bit better in this game, but for the most part, man, look, it's in here. I'm just going to read the notes and talk about what I saw. I'm going to be honest, the Bucs defense has progressively gotten worse as the season has gone on, because they started off strong, and it feels like they've just gotten worse and worse as the season has gone on, and some of it's got to be put on the criticism that a lot of people said earlier on in the season about the secondary, and I'm always one to side with defensive players, and in this case, it's kind of hard to. The evidence is kind of bearing itself out, and that, man, they got pieced up by Tyler Shute the apparently dual threat quarterback Tyler Shute out there with 2 rushing touchdowns when this game was all said and done. The Saints were only down in this game for 8 minutes and 22 seconds. They were down for 8 minutes and 22 seconds. Every other time they were either tied or in the lead. That tells you how tough it was out there for the Buccaneers on this day. Their run game was on point. Devin Neal, who's a rookie running back for the Saints, was actually killing it in place of Alvin Kamara. Have to wonder, Kamara is apparently like 100% healthy. Have to wonder how many carries he's going to get after the kind of game that Devin had. He had 70 yards in total, which gave them a run game that they really haven't had this season since Keaton Mitchell went out and they had to depend solely upon Alvin Kamara. But Kamara is like a massive playmaker, so you have to imagine that they're not just gonna like completely cut him out of the rotation, even though it is the back half of the season and there's a chance that Alvin's probably gonna leave after this. People were talking about him getting traded at the trade deadline. That didn't happen, but that would have been sick because it does feel like he's getting closer and closer to retirement. So the Tyler Shute experience has worked out very well for Saints fans, I would imagine. He has played better every single week, and they had the Bucs defense kind of like on their heels throughout the course of this game. Like I said, Tyler had 2 rushing touchdowns. One was for 34 yards. Remember what I said about explosive plays? The other one was for 11 yards. He also had like a huge run to get them inside of the Buccaneers 5 on the opening drive of the game. So it was outside of like this weird mix-up where there was a choice route for one of his wide receivers. I want to say it was Chris Olave. His wide receiver ran an out route, and Tyler thought he was going to run it up. And Zion McCollum's, who's the safety for the Buccaneers, just got like the easiest interception of his entire career. And by the way, looked up Zion because I wanted to know how to pronounce his name. Apparently, he's from Galveston. He's from Galveston Ball. I went to Galveston Ball High School, which is the exact same high school that Mike Evans went to. If you guys don't know, Galveston is like this island city that is just outside of Houston. It's like an hour away from where I live in Houston, and it's the beach location that everybody in the city goes to and hangs out. And they will most fervently tell you how disgusting they think the water is. And the water is brackish, which means it kind of is brown sometimes. A lot of that has to do with probably the mining that goes on near it, but a bigger chunk of it has to do with the fact that it is an estuary for young sea life to go into existence. So if anybody ever tells you that Galveston water is disgusting, that's not true. It actually helps young sea creatures make their way out into the ocean and helps keep the ecosystem healthy. It's supposed to look like that. But yeah, Galveston is a barrier island. It is a city, and it's the vacation spot for most people who live in Houston, Texas. And they also have one high school on the island. It's called Ball High School. And if you drive by it, it is, as you would think, it is a high school that has been hit by many, many years of seawater touching everything at the school in Rusty. But yeah, Mike Evans and Zion McCollum, who went to Sam Houston State, by the way. Mike Evans went to Texas A&M. But yeah, both of those guys. Who would have thought? I'm sure they knew that. I'm sure they know that about each other, right? Or at least a reporter told them about it. The Saints defense really brought it like this in the entirety of this game. Outside of that Zion McCollum interception, the Saints played a complete game in this one. They played all 4 quarters, and they played better than the Buccaneers did in all 4 of those quarters. Obviously, the score shows that, but sometimes that happens in the NFL, and it doesn't show that. But yeah, the Saints defense really brought it. The secondary players, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jonas Sanker, who we've already talked about on the show before, and then Alontae Taylor, who actually got an interception at one point during this game. But those guys in the secondary did an amazing job of helping set up the pass rush to get to Baker, to try and take advantage of the offensive line of the Buccaneers. They really struggled consistently to get deeper passes down the field. There was like no explosive pass plays from the Buccaneers like we saw at the beginning of the season where they were dropping bombs to Emeka Egbuka and he was just kind of like walking into the end zone. That's just like gone. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the O-line can't protect long enough for Baker to find opportunities. But there's 2 different ways that you get sacks and you get pressure. It's through pass coverage or it's through pass rush. And in this game, you can definitively say the Saints did it the hard way, and that is with pass coverage. So, and considering how young a lot of those guys are, that's really impressive. That is the biggest takeaway from what we've seen out of the Saints, because I feel like the Saints defense has played well vast majority of the season. The offense just hasn't been complimentary enough to take advantage of what they've been able to do. But it wasn't enough to overcome they have Bucky Irvin back, they have Chris Godwin back. It just wasn't enough to overcome like all the crazy amount of pressure that the Saints were able to dial up in this one. And I'll say this much. The Buccaneers may have been inconsistent throughout the course of this game. They still had a chance to win it. There was a moment in this one where it was 24-17, I believe, and it ends up with Baker throwing a ball, and I think it was to Tez Johnson. Tez loses it in the sky, and it goes over his head, and it would have been a game-winning touchdown. He was wide open, and Baker just kind of like overthrew him slightly. But nonetheless, that was a product of the pressure. The overthrow was a product of the pressure, which is why they talk about why pressures are so important, because sometimes you don't have to get the guy down on the ground. Sometimes you force a bad pass, and bad things happen, and they help the defense be successful. The Saints ran a 9-play drive immediately after the Bucs had to settle for the field goal after throwing that after attempting to throw that game-winning touchdown and it wasn't caught. They kicked a field goal thinking that they were going to get the ball back, right? And then the Saints ran the second longest drive they've had all season. Second longest drive they had in this game. It was 9 plays, and it took up 3 minutes off the clock. The last 3 drives that the Saints play, and it was crazy to watch this on the drive chart. Most of their drives in the first half and most of the third quarter are like 3 plays here, 6 plays here, 7 plays here. The last 3 drives of this game is when the Saints put it all together to finish this one out. They had 29 plays across the 3 different drives, so they were averaging almost 10 plays per drive, and then they had 13 minutes in 42 seconds that they were able to take up over the course of those 3 drives. So almost an entire quarter of football they took away, and that was towards the end of the game where while the Buccaneers are down, that they're taking away that integral time, even though the Buccaneers ended up with more time of possession when this game was over with. So yeah, it just was too much for the Bucs to overcome late in the game, because it felt like they were trying to do a bunch really late in the game, and they just didn't have time to do it. So yeah, moving on. In the oh my category here, Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, 27-22 is the final score. This game is fucking wild, because now the AFC North, which we all thought the Ravens were cruising because they had that 4-game win streak, they get to the top of the North, and then all of a sudden it all falls apart. The North is now currently in the hands of the Steelers. How long that will last? Only time will tell. The key thing to take away from this game was weird. This game was weird, like it is every single time that the Steelers and Ravens play each other. Honestly, I would say in the all-time pantheon of Ravens versus Steelers, this may be one of the highest scoring games they've ever had, because this is 49 points between 2 teams. That's crazy. Usually this game is like 9-3 or whatever. Trust me. And the opening drive is pretty antithetical to what we consider when we think about Steelers-Ravens. It has a 55-yard catch from DK Metcalf, which, by the way, is like the longest reception. It's one of the longest receptions they had all season, and it was the first pass they had over 30 yards in like 2 months or something like that. Plus, this drive, the opening drive for the Steelers, ends with Aaron Rodgers running into the end zone and hitting the discount double check. And I checked, because I did the math. I didn't do the math. I checked online. That rushing touchdown makes Aaron Rodgers the 10th oldest person to ever score a rushing touchdown in the NFL. The top 8 all belong to Tom Brady, and the 9th one belongs to Doug Flutie. Who would have thought? Maybe he gets another one, because the older he gets, the closer he gets to taking out Doug Flutie. But yeah, man. Anyway, I think we're all rooting for Phillip Rivers to get a rushing touchdown now, right? That's kind of how that's going to work. Anyway, the Ravens offense shows some form of life. They show a glimpse of looking like the offense that we thought they were going to look like this season, which is obviously the offense that we saw last year, where they were kind of both balanced. You know, Derrick Henry gets off to the rough start to this season with all the fumbles and stuff like that, generating the turnovers. The defense is like nowhere to be found at the beginning of the season. Now they're kind of popping off a little bit. They're generating turnovers. They actually carried the Ravens the last 4 games to go get those dubs. And Lamar Jackson had the hamstring injury, came back what seems to be a little too early because he was really limited either from an ankle injury or a hamstring thing or whatever it may be. He was limited in terms of his desire and his willingness to be able to run outside the pocket. This game, he was all over the place in the second half. The second half, he really, they were struggling to get the ball up and down the field in terms of like passing. One of the biggest things that I was talking to somebody that I know, Jessica, and we were talking back and forth. And we're like, dude, the Ravens offense, they throw the ball to one wide receiver and everybody else who catches it is a tight end, which there are teams in the NFL who do that, and I get it. Isaiah Likely, massive target. Mark Andrews, massive target that you can count on, that you've been throwing to for years. Zay Flowers, like a rubber band. The guy literally, I don't know how, this guy's core is insane. The angles that he hops up from the ground after he makes catches like that are going towards the turf and gets up before the DBs can even run up and touch him is insane, man. But his explosiveness is wild, and it's not just explosiveness in terms of like running with your feet or whatever. But yeah, Lamar looked like he was 100% in this game. And it showed in the second half because that's how they opened it up to be able to score. The vast majority of this game, like I said, the offense has come off like it looks pretty limited throughout the course of this game. And I think at one point we see why that is the case, why he only throws to Zay Flowers as a wide receiver. Most of this game made absolutely no sense. Like I said, it was really weird. The Ravens had more passing yards, more rushing yards, more time of possession. And they were looking like the more consistent team. The thing that is the massive outlier, and I know, and they actually had over 200 rushing yards in this game. This kind of mapped out like the type of Ravens football game you expect to see when they're like cruising to be one of the best teams in the NFL. The Steelers looked better in this game than they did versus the Colts on offense, and that was saying a lot. That was the game where they generated like 5 turnovers on the Colts or whatever. The one defining difference, or 2 defining differences in this game, they had like 2 explosive plays on offense. It was one, there was a 38-yard rush by Jaylen Warren. That was a touchdown catch. It was a complete miss on the part of the defense, and I think it was like Teddy Buchanan, one of the linebackers, did not know or either got caught lacking in terms of his man coverage versus Jaylen Warren. He's already hard to catch. He doesn't need a head start. And he got one, and he ran it into the end zone. That happens. Then there was one interception, right? Like the Steelers didn't turn the ball over. The Ravens did. They turned the ball over in the first half. And a couple plays later, the Steelers score off a Kenneth Gainwell like end around type, or I guess it would be halfback pitch. But he scores off the pitch or whatever, and those seem like the 2 major things that kind of were the big separators. Everything that the Ravens got in this game, they had to grind it out. They had to work hard to get those yards. This game was close all the way through, and in the fourth quarter on back-to-back drives that ended in field goals for the Ravens, you could easily argue those should have been touchdowns, and they probably would have won this game. They had one on a 4th and 2 where Rashad Bateman is running a crosser. He's wide open, and he just drops a pass, which is probably why they don't throw the ball to anybody but Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews. So, but yeah, he does that. And then there's another one where Isaiah Likely catches the ball in the end zone. He takes like 3 steps. There's even an argument that he was fighting off the defender after he caught the ball, and then he dropped it. The refs and everybody went back and looked at it. They said he never had control of the ball in the end zone, and he never had control and sole possession of the ball in the end zone. He did not make a football move after he caught it, even though taking the 3 steps is the football move. And they wiped that away, and that results in another field goal for the Ravens, and it kind of sets them up to the point where they're desperately trying to score on the final drive of this one while they're down 27-22. And they can't get it done. The Steelers squeak by again in another huge game for them, and they take the lead in the AFC North, and they push the Ravens out of the playoff spot while the Ravens still have a losing record. So currently, right now, the Ravens are not in the playoffs at all. They're not even in the conversation. And they have to take the AFC North back from the Steelers if they want to be in the playoffs, or Mike Tomlin's going to do it again. He's going to pull the ski mask down, and he's going to do it again. Some of you guys are ready for that, and a lot of Steelers fans, I feel like, do not want Mike Tomlin to do it again, because it's kind of hard to argue firing a guy after he makes it to the playoffs for like the 16th year in a row. Legitimately something crazy like that. Moving on, other oh my results. The Texans played the Chiefs. Oh my, what a time. What a time. I think I'll just tell you about my personal experience with this one. So last year I had this running joke with my girlfriend, Jasmine. Last year, I watch football at her place, right, on Sundays, because I stay with her on the weekends and stuff like that. And last year, the Seahawks had a shot at making the playoffs. The Texans, they were kind of doing their thing or whatever. And the Seahawks had a shot at making the playoffs last year. And I kept making this joke, Jasmine, you got to lock in. The season is on the line. And it didn't really mean anything for her. It wasn't like she was watching Seahawks games or anything like that. But it was just a really funny joke I would tell her. And then for the first time all season, because for the Texans, it is a real situation, I told her, I was like, Jasmine, you got to lock in because you know. And she rolled her eyes. And she was like, the season is on the line. And I was like, you get it. The season is on the line. Because it was. And it is still to this day. And that's the problem with the running joke is, like, once you start saying the season is on the line, it continues to be on the line until the season is over. So, Texans coming in here. Season's on the line. Kansas City Chiefs, season's on the line. And they murked them. The Chiefs, in the first half of this game, well, vast majority of this game, looked terrible. They were not super competitive, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Houston Texans pass coverage is just insane. Combine that with the fact that the Chiefs offensive line has been very similar to the Buccaneers and kind of on a downward trail. They've been eroding. They had I think it was their right tackle got hurt this game. They've had issues with the left tackle and the left guard and all this kind of stuff like that. And this game, D-line goes off. Patrick Mahomes looks like a mortal human being for the first time in a long, long time for a lot of people. And the Chiefs are dead. I'll say it, they're not making the playoffs. This year, there's a legit chance that only one of the four teams that played in the NFC and AFC championship games make it to the playoffs. And it legit may two. Right? It might be the Bills, and it probably is going to be the Eagles, for sure. And then it also might be the Bills, even though I feel way more confident about the Bills, even though they have not played super well this season. I'll take that. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, the Texans come out here. Offense doesn't look great, but it doesn't matter. The defense is going out there. They're shutting down one of the best offensive players in the history of the NFL. A lot of teams have been able to do that this season. Some of that has to do with the efficiency of the wide receivers. A lot of guys are not really getting crazy amounts of separation or anything like that, so they don't get massive, huge chunks of yards like they were used to getting. And then, of course, Travis Kelce is getting older, so there's times where you can't count on him to do the option route. And a lot of teams are also getting a lot better at taking away the option route underneath in terms of reading when they're using the block and release technique and all that kind of stuff like that. Also, it doesn't help that the Chiefs have not had a run game all season. It's been gone. The only time that you can definitively say they had a run game is when they played against the Lions, and it was Patrick Mahomes running the ball that really made the big difference in terms of how they blew the Lions out. But overall, man, outside of the third quarter in this game, the Texans, it was close on the scoreboard, but when you watched the game that was going on, it was clear the Texans had control. And C.J. Stroud was able to finally piece together a good drive to really separate. But my biggest thing is we are a run-centric team, quote-unquote, according to the way that the coaching staff wants to run the team and stuff like that. But we don't have the type of offense. We don't have the type of blocking up front, which, by the way, the blocking has gotten significantly better in the back half of the season, despite what I'm about to say right now. We don't have the blocking to really get like explosive run plays or anything, but we are a run-based team who believes in establishing the run, and I'm always going to support the team that establishes the run. So the Texans did that successfully. They were able to control the clock vast majority of this game, and Patrick Mahomes was under duress the entirety of this game, and that's what really made the difference. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. This game was fucking sick. Like I said before, I'm a Houston Texans fan, have been since 2002. That was the year the team was founded, and this may be one of the most important wins in the history of this franchise. No matter what happens this season, to know that the genesis of the Patrick Mahomes era of the NFL was the 3-touchdown comeback versus the Houston Texans when Deshaun Watson didn't suck ass at football anymore. And to know that was the genesis of what we are dealing with right now, where Patrick Mahomes is clearly on the path to being, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, to get this win the way that the Texans did with the draft picks that they've made over the last couple of years, piecing it together. One of the best defensive performances they've had all season against one of the toughest teams they've faced all year. It is nothing short of amazing for me as a fan, and I think for the rest of the NFL too, man. Like, I think, people believe in defense again. People believe in this season has been defined. This season overall, a lot of teams are kind of like up in the air, but I'm starting to see, and I kid you not, I've said this before. I said it last week. I think I said it the week before too. It feels like the running backs are starting to pick up steam across the league. Like, you see Jahmyr Gibbs, you see David Montgomery, you see R.J. Harvey starting to get more carries now that J.K. Dobbins is no longer in the mix for the Denver Broncos. And the Derrick Henry getting back to doing normal stuff. Saquon Barkley has his huge game. And you feel like the running backs are picking up steam, and that's one of the defining, and of course the Bears and all their guys, Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift, they're starting to pick it up. And those are going to be key. That's going to be key for being successful in the playoffs. Like, the teams that are going to the playoffs are the teams that can run the ball and play defense right now. It's not about necessarily having the best quarterback or anything like that. It's about running the ball and playing defense. Moving on, let's talk about this is what we're here for games. These are the best games of the entire week, in my opinion. These are the games that made fans for the NFL, in my opinion. And this is the last category. I think there's 3 games in here. And if you haven't heard me talk about the Tennessee Titans, is because for the first time all season, they're in this category. So weird. But yeah, Thursday Night Football, probably the best Thursday Night Football we've had in a while. And we've had some pretty good ones this season, but this one was electric from top to bottom, man. The Detroit Lions, 44. Dallas Cowboys, 30. I'm afraid it is my personal favorite time of the year, folks. The Texans win, the Cowboys lose. The Texans keep their playoff hopes alive. The Cowboys are dead. Dead in the water, baby. The Cowboys are dead. TNF turned into a playoff eliminator game, and I wouldn't even say that the Lions beating the Cowboys actually helped their playoff chances when it was all said and done. I don't think the Lions are making the playoffs. I haven't thought that. I've thought the Lions are not making the playoffs since about like week 8 when I looked at their schedule, and I was like, oh, they haven't beat an important team all season. They haven't beat a team that's held a playoff spot all season. And this Cowboys win that they got is probably their biggest win other than when they beat the Ravens on Monday Night Football. And look at where the Ravens are right now. This may be the best team that they've beaten all year. And that means something. It's a decline, one could say, but it also could just be the schedule arbitration type stuff. Like the schedule of being a really good team multiple years in a row and constantly ending up playing the best teams in the NFL over time. But yeah, this Lions team, man, they looked amazing on Thursday Night Football, but we have to remember a lot of what we saw was I guess you call it the return to the mean, is what they say, the ball knowers say. But yeah, the Cowboys defense looked a lot like the Cowboys defense we saw at the first half of this season. I think some of that has to do with just how good the Lions offense is up front, right? When the Lions can go out here and get clean pockets and I wrote this in my notes, there's a thing that bonds Dak Prescott and Jared Goff together. When they get clean pockets, they are top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. When they got to look around and they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on around them, they got to look over their shoulder, they become bottom 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that's a reasonable place to be, especially considering some of us know how hard D linemen hit. And I can't imagine what that feels like if you're just standing out somewhere. Like, it literally, I had to empathize by picturing it myself. Like, what if you're just like standing outside and then all of a sudden somebody just hits you like full force from the right-hand side. You don't see them coming. They don't say anything. They just run straight into you, right? But yeah, this game overall was a banger. The Lions broke the Cowboys' streak of pretty good defensive play over the top. They forced the Cowboys into their ideal type of game. Like, this is a game where the Lions made the Cowboys play their style of football. And to a certain degree, at certain points, towards the end, the Cowboys kind of matched some of the energy that was being put off. But you start off with a consistent run game. You use the play action to slow down the pass rush, which also helps Jared Goff dime up people downfield. He was hitting Jameson Williams. He was doing a lot of hitting Amon-Ra St. Brown, who came into the game hurt. His ankle was messed up, which I feel like his ankle's messed up every year because he spends most of his time like breaking tackles, and then people fall on his ankle while he's running. The defense adjusts to the deeper routes downfield, and then they start focusing on Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery underneath or in the screens, plus like running the ball all combined together. And it's just kind of this like I said with the Vikings, it's like this vicious cycle, this rinse and repeat kind of deal. You focus on one thing, we're putting the ball the other place. You know what I mean? Eventually, you guess wrong. You got a guy who's out of position. You have somebody who can't cover Jahmyr Gibbs in open space, which guess what? That's every guy. Or you have somebody who can't keep up with Jameson Williams. Jared Goff's going to hit him. And it comes down to them having a clean pocket is the most important part of their success. The Lions scored on 8 of their 11 drives in this game. I removed the last drive because it was them kneeling the ball out. But they scored on 8 of their 11 drives in this game. The Cowboys played some good defense early on in the red zone, and the Lions just kept wearing them down. And about halfway through the second quarter, the Lions started what would eventually be 6 of 7 straight drives where they scored on each one of them. They only didn't score on one drive in the it was like halfway through the second quarter all the way to like the start of the fourth, and they had 7 possessions. They only didn't score because they missed the field goal. They would have scored on 7 consecutive drives if they had hit that field goal. But the Cowboys offense didn't score a touchdown in this game until the third quarter. They really struggled to even get it in the red zone, and a lot of that had to do with they took away the run game. But like I said, Dak Prescott and Jared Goff, they are bonded by the fact that when they're under pressure, they're terrible. When they're not under pressure, they're amazing. And Jared Goff was not under pressure, but you know who was? Dakota Prescott, Dakota Rain, and they was raining them sacks on him. Like I said, that combined with the fact that CeeDee Lamb gets concussed in this game because he tries to go for like a one-handed snag, and he just straight up smacks his head on the turf to the point where he his body locks up and he starts fencing, which is the thing where your hands and fingers go in weird directions. He actually had I watched a video breakdown where they talked about his leg was even doing it, and that's why a lot of people thought he was actually okay because he wasn't completely still, but his leg was moving involuntarily, which is kind of wild. Not kind of wild, it was very scary, and I hope CD's okay and he doesn't force himself back. We saw also in this week when we're talking about we haven't talked about it yet. When we talk about the Bengals, T. Higgins actually has a moment where he catches a pass and he bangs his head on the very hard frozen ground that they're playing on, and he grabs his head right immediately after. It was kind of scary because he was concussed 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, despite all of that going wrong, Dak being under heavy pressure, the run game being non-existent for him up front, CeeDee Lamb going out, there was 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and this game was 30-27. I think that's a testament to the Cowboys' offense being able to figure out how to do stuff throughout the course of this game, despite having certain parts of their offense removed, and that doesn't matter in the long run. It is kept close, but not close enough, because basically the Cowboys spend most of this game chasing a 2-possession lead that the Lions have on them, and they never catch them, right? The Lions get in the Lions get into their bag. They start running the ball, and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery start killing them. They take away the clock. They're getting huge gashing runs up the middle. They actually score, I think, like 3 plays after the Cowboys cut it to 30-27. And the Lions in this game with their 3 turnovers forced because DJ Reed got an interception. He ripped the ball out of a wide receiver's hands, which is kind of crazy. And Al-Quadin Muhammad, one of their D linemen, fucking balled out, man. He had 2 sacks on this one, and he had a bunch of pressure to go along with it. The Lions season is, for me, like I said, donezo. Technically, they had a 55% chance of making the playoffs, which means they're hoping the Bears and the Packers just like completely fall apart, and a couple of other teams too. They're hoping on like the Seahawks and the 49ers to just fall off a cliff these last 4 games of the season, because, like I said, when they play against a team that's good or a team with a winning record, they don't beat them. That's basically what their MO has been all season. They're 1 game behind them in terms of like the Bears. They're 1 game behind the Bears, and they play them in the season finale. Plus, the Bears' last 4 games are wild. They play the Packers again, and then they play the 49ers as well in their last 4 games. So there's a real chance that one of the final playoff spots, the last playoff spot, the wild card 3 spot, comes down to Lions-Bears for the season finale if things go the way of the Lions. The Cowboys aren't likely to win the NFC Beast. It's actually I think it's impossible. I think if the Eagles win 2 more games, they will have won the division with time to spare. But winning the games, I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, kind of hard to come by for the Eagles right now. So we'll see. They have no chance of winning the NFC East. And I say that right now, week 14, the Cowboys have 0 chance. They're done. And it's yet another year that it is not their year. Moving on, I think this is the last. Oh no, I got 2 more games on this one. The Buffalo Bills 39, the Cincinnati Bengals 34. Holy shit. This was a game between 2 playoff teams, but only one of the teams in this game is going to the playoffs. The Bengals used one key principle throughout the course of this game that I feel like can help us all in our sports journey. That guy is bigger than that guy. They have T. Higgins, they have Jamar Chase, they have Mike Gesicki, who killed it in this game, especially in a lot of the key moments. But Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they spent vast majority of this game taking advantage of the fact that the Bills were trying to take advantage of them. So I'll explain it like this. The Bengals, this season, not a great offensive line. Not great offensive line performance. They also have a quarterback who not many people believe is 100% healed and is out there playing. And so the Bills were way more focused on trying to generate pressure on him, trying to heat him up a little bit. And they ran a lot of man coverage versus wide receivers that they know good and goddamn well they're probably not going to win or be able to cover over the course of an entire game running man against them. And they were banking on the pass rush to get to Joe Burrow. Unfortunate for them, the offensive line for the Bengals only had to block for a second and a half or 2 seconds because that's how fast Joe Burrow was getting the ball out. And it got to the point where, they got fucked by their first half game plan, and they were down 21-11, I believe. Yeah, they were down 21-11 at halftime, 22-11 at halftime of this game, and the Bills are having massive problems at this point, right? The only touchdown that they have in this game is Josh Allen avoiding 2 defenders sacking him, running to the right-hand side. The wide receivers are in an extra improvisation play, and he throws a ball over the shoulder of Demetrius Knight, who turned his back to go and defend Khalil Shakir. It is an insane play, but it is not the type of play that is going to help you consistently win football games, and that is the only touchdown they have in this one. The Bengals defense was immaculate for a vast majority of this game until the fourth quarter. We'll talk about what happened in the fourth quarter. Kind of crazy. But yeah, they're struggling to even score the ball. They're struggling to move the ball in general, and Josh Allen's out here throwing lasers. And that's the crazy part about this. And the Bills defense in the second half, though, they change it up. They mix it up a little bit. And it works. They carried the team for the first time all season. And what probably was one of the most important games of the entire year because there's 4 games to go, and they're competing for a wild card spot. They are not really necessarily in contention for winning the AFC East right now either because of how well the Patriots have played all season. After halftime of this game, the Bengals do not score again until about 6 minutes into the fourth quarter. So a quarter and like a fourth, 1.25 of a quarter elapses, and then the Bengals score for the first time after scoring 22 points in the first half of this game. The pressure gets started. Started getting home for the Bengals up front. They started taking away a lot of the underneath passes, the Bills did, and the Bills switched to a zone heavier approach, which was slowing down Joe Burrow's processing of like where to place the ball and stuff like that. This combined with like general offensive line struggles, because a lot of teams in the NFL they can't really run elite pass rush for 4 straight quarters. They can do it for 2 very easily, and for a lot of teams, for the good teams, the time where their pass rush really emerges is the second half of the game, and that's pretty much what happened in this one, to the point where it forced the craziest sequence of plays, and I'm just gonna read them off. So this is how the Bills got back into the game and got the lead. The Bills offense scores a touchdown finally, and it's off Josh Allen running for 40 yards because they're taking advantage of, and vast majority of this game, they did this as well. They took advantage of the fact that the Bengals were running man defense against their wide receivers to try and force Josh Allen to throw underneath where they felt like they had the advantage, right? The tight ends had a lot of key catches. The tight ends have been massive for the Bills overall, especially considering they're playing in a snow-covered field. They were running man coverage, and they felt like they had the advantage when it was all said and done. The backs being turned to Josh Allen is a problem, though, because Josh Allen has a propensity to run in the open space. And he ran in the open space until he got into the end zone. So it was a 40-yard touchdown run from Josh Allen to start this off. Then the next drive, Christian Benford, who I thought was from Channelview, I keep mixing him up with another guy that plays for the Bills, who I think is actually on IR. But Christian Benford intercepts a check down throw to Chase Brown from Joe Burrow and runs it back for a pick 6. That gets the lead for the Bills. That's back-to-back plays. And then the next drive from the Bengals, Jordan Phillips, the D tackle, blocks a pass from Joe Burrow, and AJ Epinesa. Remember how we talked about how the D-line has been waiting to get healthy all season? They kind of got healthy in this game. AJ Epinesa catches it, and they score a play. The Bills score on a 6-play drive, like following that immediately. That is insane. And after all that, the Bills are up 39-28. And the Bengals score again after that in a 4-play drive to make it 39-36 or something like that when it was all said and done. The 64 passing plays throughout the course of this game in the snow. The absolutely amazing offensive plays we saw across the board. The defensive plays up front. The recovery from the Bills. Like I said, this is the first time you can definitively say you saw the Bills defense carry the Bills on offense all season. And that's amazing on so many different levels because it means maybe the Bills aren't as bad as some of these really bad games they've played this year. They had James Cook. They actually got to the point where, the Bengals felt like they had all the momentum in this game. They actually stripped James Cook as he was about to score a touchdown and then recovered it in the end zone for a touchback, and then the Bengals scored off of that as well earlier in the first half of the game. But yeah, man, it has got to be something that gives you a little bit of hope. The Bills have looked up and down throughout the course of this season, and I know it's the Bengals. And the Bengals defense is not one that people think is just absolutely locked down. I know it's the Bengals offense, that offensive line that, is towards the bottom portion of the league in terms of performance. I know it's a team that's playing in the snow. I know it's a team that doesn't really have a run game with Chase Brown or anything like that. I know it's a defense that a lot of people think is just objectively bad. But to sit here and say that you saw what that Bengals team did and how they had what the position that they had the Bills in, and they were able to fight their way out of it and come out on top, that's got to give you some kind of hope that maybe they got some magic in that old hat, as they say about Frosty the Snowman. Anyway, playoffs are coming up. The Bengals won't be there, but the Bills will, more than likely. Tennessee Titans, Cleveland Browns. The drama around the Browns continues, and I honestly am shocked at how much energy is being dedicated to talking about one of historically the worst teams in the NFL. The Browns are a poorly run team. They have been a poorly run team. Ladies and gentlemen, I refer to you to the simple fact that for the first time in like 20 years, the Browns went to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, and they told him the following year, hey, bro, kick rocks. We don't think you're that good. And they haven't even come close to it. They haven't even come close to the playoffs since then. As a matter of fact, they made one of the worst trades in NFL history for Deshaun Watson, because now look at where the Texans are at. The Texans used those draft picks to draft Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud and a bunch of other players, too. I think it was like a pick that ended up with Jalen Higgins as well. So like, it's just to sit here and be upset about the decision-making of one of the worst teams in the NFL, you are fighting a losing battle. They suck at football. And it is okay for you to understand that some people are bad at their job. It doesn't have to be some grand conspiracy against Shedeur Sanders, which, by the way, I didn't know we were all so gung-ho and concerned about Shedeur. I understand, man. He is the son of a lot of people's favorite athlete in the history of this league, and that's totally understandable because Deion Sanders is cool as fuck. I can't even lie about that. He's swaggy as hell. But to sit here and break your neck over this idea that Shedeur is being orchestrated against, when you know what Shedeur did during the draft process, you know that the Cleveland Browns suck at football. You know that the Cleveland Browns are a team that historically, does a lot of things wrong just on every single wavelength. To think that it's a plot instead of incompetence is hilarious to me. But, Kevin Stefanski a couple years ago was Coach of the Year, and I thought he was Coach of the Year then too. But it's been a long time since then, apparently. I don't think Stefanski is the problem. The bigger issue is they're very clearly tanking. And I think a lot of people are having a tough time accepting that. And they're saying that it's sabotage when, as a matter of fact, it is them sabotaging the entire team, not Shedeur. Like people are talking about like Shedeur shouldn't even play for them next year. I was like, he doesn't have a choice, but okay. But yeah, that is my take on the Browns situation. I thought the biggest story coming into this game was the fact that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders spent the pre-draft process training together and have been cool with each other ever since. So it was really cool for both of them to be in a position that when their teams did face off against each other, Shedeur wasn't warming the bench. He was out there playing. As a matter of fact, out there, both of these guys, Shedeur looks like he took a step forward. He had one horrendously ugly play in this game, and it was that crazy ass pick that he threw while jumping in the air in the middle of the field with defensive players crossing each other right into the path of where the ball was going. He threw it over his wide receiver's head, and he threw it right to another safety, and there was 3 other DBs around him. That's what a rookie would do, right? He's a rookie quarterback. That's what he did. That's what he would do. And he should be allowed to make mistakes, bro. Especially, he plays for the fucking Browns, bro. He's allowed to make plenty of mistakes. The overall thing that came out of this one, Tony Pollard dominated this game. He was massive for the Titans offense. This is the best that the Titans have looked all season, and I'm a person who's watched every single Cleveland Browns game. They are one of the better defenses in the NFL, and it was shocking to see how many times they got beat by the Titans up front. And maybe, just maybe, Cam Ward's turning the corner. Maybe it's a young team overall. It's not just Cam Ward that's a rookie out there. There's a lot of wide receivers that most of you guys never even heard of. Alec Mayer, who I think he's the real deal. Cameron Dike, real deal. Looks like he's going to be a really good returner. Don't know about the wide receiver stuff, but Tony Pollard, offensive line. And this is the offensive line that's going up against a defensive line that has Myles Garrett, who, by the way, he did get a sack. He's at 20 and a half, I believe it is, in total. He did get a sack in this game, so there's a real chance the last 4 games Myles gets 5 sacks, and he breaks the record. But he breaks the record and sets a new one. But more than likely, he is just going to break the record overall. It's going to be pretty sick. Hopefully, he says he hopes that it'll be during a win. I don't know how likely that is. But for the most part, man, this was I personally enjoyed this game a ton watching it because there were so many amazing throws from Cam and Shedeur Sanders throughout the course of this game. And both of the offenses were playing really well, except like towards the middle part of the game. I saw some objectively great throws in adverse weather from both of these quarterbacks. The Titans were better. The Titans were the better team all 4 quarters of this game, so it made sense that they ended up winning it when it was all said and done. Tony Pollard, like I said, he killed the Browns up front. He had 161 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, man. The Titans offense for the first time this season had multiple truly explosive plays, not off gimmicks or anything like that. Explosive plays off wide receivers getting separation, explosive plays off the offensive line blocking so well that a safety had to be forced to come and try and stop Tony Pollard. Shedeur was a massive part of why the Browns offense was anything close to successful. If you guys didn't watch the game, Shedeur, his biggest attribute in this game was his willingness and his timing. So his willingness to hang in the pocket and take contact from defensive linemen to sell the screen plays, to maximize the amount of time to get the ball out to the playmakers in open space, to increase the amount of time that the DBs had to cover the wide receivers and find the open person. And then on top of that, he did a great job of knowing when to escape the pocket and get something out of a play where he couldn't find a way to throw the ball, so he took off with his own legs. He did that vast majority of the game. The only time where it didn't look that great was in the third quarter, and ironically enough, that's the quarter where he threw the interception, if I'm not mistaken, too. Like I said, he sold so many of these plays despite the fact that he knew that his offensive line just could not hold up as long as it needed to for him to go out there and get busy. His understanding of when to run and when to stay in the pocket was on point all but 1 quarter. That's it. Combined with the fact that he throws the ball with no hesitation when it comes to this person is open or this person is going to be open, and you see a lot of hesitation in Dylan Gabriel's game and the opportunities that he had. Huge game for Harold Fannin Jr. for the Browns. He is easily the biggest bright spot. Him and Cody Swessinger are the biggest bright spots out of the rookie class that has come out of this one. And if Shedeur turns out to be the real deal, because I don't like to be the person that sits here and takes 3 games and uses that to extrapolate out an entire career, but Harold Fannin Jr. has been doing it all season. Harold Fannin Jr., Quinshon Judkins, and then, of course, Cody Swessinger, which, by the way, there's a real chance that they get offensive and defensive rookie of the year when it's all said and done, so that'd be pretty dope. And I think Tedero McMillan may have a shot at offensive rookie of the year, but whatever. But yeah, Shedeur looking pretty good out there, man. Plus the defense that's looking strong. Somehow, some way, the Browns will mess this up, but there's a way that you can look at it as a Browns fan and see hope and potential, knowing that you're going to have more high draft picks coming into the next draft. So yeah, like I said before, the biggest issue in this game was the turnovers. So when it was all said and done, the Titans forced a fumble that they ended up recovering. They got an interception, the crazy one off Shedeur Sanders, and then they also blocked a punt late in this game. In the second half, we saw the Titans' defensive line really turn it on, and that was what really kind of created some of the separation we saw. At one point, I believe the score in this game was, 31-17. And that it's one of those deceptive scores where it seems like you're up by 3 touchdowns, but it's really just 2 possessions, right? And they just had, by the way, I have a note in here. Oh, it's the Jerry Jeudy thing. Jerry Jeudy caught the second Browns touchdown in this game and ran it for, he caught it, and it was a 60-yard touchdown for him. And I still don't think that he should be opening his mouth about getting the ball. That's just me personally. Judkins had a massive catch in this game that almost resulted in another touchdown. He got stopped at the 3-yard line because of a crazy hustle play for, I think it was Kevin Watson Jr. from the Tennessee Titans. And it led to Shedeur Sanders throwing a dime to David Njoku in the back left corner of the end zone, which he did again on what would have been the game-tying drive. He threw the touchdown to Harold Fannin Jr., and he mossed a defensive back, legitimately like dunked on a defensive back in the back of the end zone. And then the 2-point conversion happened, and I'm sure you've seen that one on the internet, and everybody's pissed off about it. Quinshon Judkins has gone out there in the Wildcat multiple times this season. Have never seen him run anything that looks similar to that play. And obviously, when you're in a high leverage game, I guess, and you're trying to win, in theory, you're trying to win the game. You would run something that maybe the other team has not seen for the sake of surprising them and stuff like that and getting something out of it. It turns out that it was so unexpected that it caught the Browns off guard too. And Quinshon Judkins forgot, I guess, to throw the reversal that was supposed to go with that play, and then he turned his hips and tried to throw it back to the receiver who ran the reversal, and it got knocked down by 3 Titans defensive players who were just standing out there on the edge. And the Titans kneel it out and they win the game. The game ends with the Titans playing their first complete game of the season, which I think they're legitimately should be a lot of hype around in terms of like the fan base and stuff like that. Obviously, they're going to have to go and find themselves a new coach, but this is the best that the Titans have looked all season. They scored a season high. This is, I want to say, only like the 3rd time that they've scored multiple touchdowns in a single game. It's been that kind of a season. They got 4 more games to go out there and do some more stuff, and we'll see what happens, man. But I think a lot of people are hoping they just don't mess up the draft pick at this point, because ending the season on a 5-game win streak would be nice, but it pales in comparison to potentially being in position to draft a player that could permanently change the way that the Titans play football. That being said, I'm done. You're done. This show's over. You need to go home. You need to make sure you hydrate. I didn't even have to drink water this entire episode because I've been drinking all my water beforehand. This is like my second one in the last like 48 hours or whatever. So it's like 9 cups of water in that thing. I feel like I have to pee a bunch, but I still feel pretty good overall. Thanks to everybody who checked in, watched the podcast in any way, shape, or form. Appreciate anybody who stuck around, even though I said it would be an hour or less, and we're on 1 hour and 50 minutes. Shout out to you. If you got any takes on the NFL, hit me up in the comments. Like and subscribe if you made it to this point during the pod. Also, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook. Hit me up on Instagram at TheAshtonForever. I'm out. Hydrate. Tell the people in your life that you love them. Tell your enemies that you hate them. Actually, don't tell people that you hate them. Just don't say anything to your enemies, The thing that frustrates people that don't like you the most is when you don't talk to them. And most importantly, go home, Roger.